All right, we're live. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Nate. Take two. We're off to a great start. Still glowing over here.
There's some technical difficulties that we had. Yes. So for the audience, we had started to record. Lisa was midway through her story. My technology basically cut out to tell her she needs to tell the story in a more elaborate way. So we're gonna reshoot this again, and hopefully, the recording and the microphone doesn't go anywhere. But I'm sorry about that. But we were talking about extreme ownership and how potentially, there is a way maybe that you could take it too far. Somebody could take extreme ownership too far to the detriment of other people. Yeah. And now I'd like you to reshare your story, please, because I was all into it about the hairball and then the technology had some issues. So over to you again.
All right. So recap, where I was telling the story to get to was conversation around, can you take extreme ownership and personal accountability too far where you move from leading by example to raise the bar to essentially enabling bad behavior or poor or low standards for others around you? And I was sharing a silly story because I was in the shower this morning and I was getting out and I was thinking about, Nate, your conversations that you and I have previously had about doing things around the house for your spouse or your kids, where if you see something that needs to be done, just do it. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Mm-hmm. Don't complain about it. Just get it done and move on with your day. Could be something as simple as like picking a piece of paper off the floor or moving a dirty dish into the dishwasher. And you and I are very similar in that mentality. But I was in the shower this morning and I was like looking around thinking, and there was a hairball in the bottom of the shower. And it's not like over the drain. It was moved off to the side. And I was like, okay, someone who shall not be named was probably in the shower between when I was yesterday and when I got in this morning, took the hairball, out of the drain, but didn't take it to the garbage, just put it on the side of the shower. And I had this like personal moral dilemma of, should I pick up the hairball? Or should I leave it? Because at some point, I want the behavior to change for this other said person versus what I felt like in that scenario is I just kind of come back by and like clean up all the things that are left over on a day-to-day basis. And it's a stupid, silly example, but what I took away and what I've been thinking about all morning is, where's the line for people? And it can be in your own family. It can be in your professional world with your team. It can be with your friends. Is there a line where we who are really into personal development, like a lot of our users are in habitual growth and we want to raise the bar, we want to set the standard. Do we ever go too far? Do we ever do things to such an extreme level of accountability and ownership that rather than prompt behavior change through our own example, we actually enable people to stay at a lower standard for themselves? Yeah. So I'm curious on your thoughts. I don't have an answer. It just was something I've been thinking about all morning.
I have plenty of thoughts as usual, but I want to know what you did first. Did you move the hairball or did you go get said person?
Sure didn't.
Huh?
Sure didn't.
You sure did. Well, did you have the conversation with said person?
Sure didn't.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think, so here's my answer, because I deal with this, but on the other side, your children, your family is a little bit more mature, grown up than mine is. Obviously, I have 3 little kids, 7 and under. And so the conversations, even though they might be the same, they're about different topics. So as an example, we make the kids help us unload the dishes, right? Last night, they actually helped me fold the laundry and then they put them away. But there are times where they come in and, it's a long day at school and they just take off all their clothes and they just throw everything everywhere. And it's like, okay, well, do I tell them, hey, no, you need to go get your clothes and put them on the stairs or go put them in the laundry? So I kind of answer this in twofold. One, is it a scenario where somebody can learn something out of it, right? Are you trying to teach that person something? And if so, then that, begs the question, right? What's the right way to approach it? Because you are then delegating that task right, wrong, or indifferent. The other piece is, hey, this is just here. There's nobody else around, or it's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to take ownership and I'm going to deal with it. Andy talks about the pee drops on the toilet seat. We talked about the pieces of paper on the ground. Like I constantly am picking up like rocks that the kids bring inside and like putting them back outside because there really isn't a lesson to be learned there. Now, let's juxtapose that with something that's going on in our team right now where we're working with one of the team members and they're helping spin up a policy for us. And something that I thought was going to take about 6 hours has now taken 4 days. And we're still not actually done.
Yeah.
But I was having a conversation, ironically, with Bree about this on Saturday. And I was like, look, I'm not going to take this back. Like, I'm going to beat my head against the wall because this person is going to have to learn what our correct branding is, where the standard is, where this bar is. And I don't care how many times I have to say, no, don't bring it back to me until it's at this point where we can actually review, because we can see the document in full. We can see the layout. We can see, the spelling errors are eliminated, all this stuff. That's something where if I just take it back, I'm now taking somebody else's responsibility, what their current role is or should be, and then putting that burden on myself. And they're not learning anything out of it, because at the end of the day, they're going to learn this is the expectation. I'm not going to take this back to Nate until this is in a place where he can review it quickly because I've done my role, to the best of my abilities. So I kind of look at it like, if somebody's sheeping out and they just don't want to do the work, or do they not know how? And both of those are different conversations. It's kind of meaning the same thing. But I do think that there is a point where we put so much on ourselves, and it doesn't mean we're taking the responsibility because we can shoulder the burden and nobody else can do it. It is, we either don't want to have the conversation, right? It's not worth the effort of arguing with somebody, or we just need to move it so quickly that we're like, okay, well, we just need to get it done now. Versus, hey, you're going to learn something from this. You need to take this on. This is your responsibility. And if you can't learn that responsibility, or you're going to have some growing pains coming out of it, I'll work with you in that. But that's a different style conversation. And when you start to take those types of tasks or actions back onto yourself, you're actually inhibiting somebody else's growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. The only thing I would add is that I think there's a third column where we do something and it's not that someone doesn't want to do it or they can't do it. They aren't even aware that they're not doing something. And I think that's where some of the leading by example changes over into potentially enabling, because we see it, they're not aware of it, but a conversation is never had to even bring awareness, and so we just continue to do things. And it's such an interesting, nuanced conversation, because Andy talks about it, Jocko talks about it, this mentality of extreme ownership that's so important when it comes to raising our own standards, raising the people around us, leading teams. And yet there's all these different slices of what that actually means and what is needed from you as an individual who's taking ownership and accountability to help bring that other person along. And it's not a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter, hey, do this, then this, in every single situation.
Yeah, I don't think, there's definitely not like a one-size-fits-all. But in that scenario, let's just take your furball in the shower example. That's something where I, like, if it were me, I would leave it there. I would grab that person and I would say, hey, this is here. I'm going to take care of this, but I want you to know, like, this isn't my responsibility. The next time you do this, I'm expecting it to be in the trash can. And you're going to say it much more eloquently and probably not as harsh as I would. But the point is, right, to what you said, right? We're in a society now that has rewarded being silent for how long? And it's something that I've been actively working on with Bree, where it's like, no, I'm going to say something. I don't care if it's uncomfortable for people. And it doesn't mean I'm trying to be mean or trying to be a jerk about it, but it does mean, hey, there's a standard, there's an expectation. My kids, if you're 7 years old, that's great. You can still help do stuff, right? I will help you along the way. I'm going to be here to support you. If if you're creating a policy for us, right? Like the example that I use, hey, you may not know these things. You may not be aware of the details, but unless I tell you what the expectation is, unless I communicate that in an effective way and then let you go out and kind of trip and fall and figure it out for yourself, there's no way you're actually going to learn, because otherwise it's just me telling you what I want done versus you saying, no, I have this standard. I know what the expectation is, but I also have now adopted the standard. I look for details. I look for the things that I can help improve. And that's where the accountability ripple effect really comes into play, is because now you're shaping someone's perception of all of the details, all of the things that you and I have already learned to some degree, because we didn't start there. We learned this over time, like over the last specifically couple of years. There are details of, hey, Lisa, we're recovering this, we're recording this video. Let's look at the camera. Let's not look down. Let's make sure notifications are 0. Is the lighting correct? What's happening behind us? But all of these details start to come to fruition when you start to pay attention. But if you don't pay attention, you don't know.
Yeah, and I think you said something really important, and it's one of the things in the professional space that I've really tried to be better at, and I'm still getting better at, but is clarifying what the expectation is for a standard. And whether it's an initial interaction in a one-on-one, or if it's coming into a new team or a cross-functional team, I mean, I will literally say, I have high standards for this team. We work together, we win together, and we're going to set the bar for best practices across the board, period. And we may not know what that means exactly. If people don't know me, they don't know, haven't worked with me before, but I've said it. I've said, hey, our team operates differently. My interactions with you are going to be different than other interactions with other people. Mm-hmm. And so naturally people then are curious, well, what does that mean? How am I included? And then people get excited. It's like, well, hey, I want to be a part of that. Yeah. That is actually doing something and changing behavior and collectively doing something together that probably hasn't been done yet. And so I wanted to point that out, because not only, in our homes is it great to say, hey, I have this expectation here, but don't be afraid to say it in other settings, because it's really coming from a place of good intent to, raise the bar for everyone around you, because we know in most situations, people have more in the tank that they can still grow and develop and get better.
Yeah, there's a lot we can unpack there, and I agree with all that. One starts with vocality and communication, making sure you're able to articulate the right things. Above and beyond that, a couple of things that kind of, as you were speaking, jumped out at me. One of them is, once people start to be aware, it's really hard to put the cat back in the bag. And so you start to notice more and more and more details, which then raises the tide for all ships. And I think that's really important, because what you just said about, hey, well, your team seems to be operating a little bit better, or you guys seem a little bit happier. It's not necessarily because you have a different workload. It's because you have a different standard, a different set of requirements or regulations that you've implemented in your team, your home, or your relationships, or whatever it is. It's one of the reasons why I'm so big on family of choice. It's like, for me to succeed and thrive in social settings, I need a two-way street. I don't want to keep chasing people, right? That means, to me, you don't care about me because you're not putting in effort. Well, that's the same thing when it comes to a conversation, a project, or whatever. Using your silly Hairball example, like, I'm going to give you another example, which I really like, because you and I grew up in the era of the Berenstain Bears, right? And so I have all of our actual childhood books here that I read to my kids. And it's fun for me to go through them again, because as an adult, you're like, wow, these are like amazing life lessons. And I find myself all the time telling kids, hey, do you remember when Brother and Sister Bear did this? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, this is why they did it. And it's really funny, because one of the books is about a messy room. And even if in the silly example of, hey, kids, you're going to get up and you're going to make your bed every day. And then you're going to put your clothes away and you're going to clean up your toys. And every week we're going to go through and we're going to clean our room a little bit. Where I'm going with this is, it's not about the task, but it becomes this, hey, I found this toy over here because I cleaned my room, or hey, I can actually see my clothes because I don't have 7,000 shirts tucked in a drawer. But I use that example because when I talk to them about it, it's, hey, do you remember how Brother and Sister Bear cleaned their room and then they found all the toys and they were able to play much more effectively because they could find the things that they were wanting for, they could see all the toys that were out, And that to me is really important, because especially when you do it in business settings, it's like, hey, we can communicate a lot more effectively. We've got a process, right? We aren't going to waste each other's time with a meeting for a meeting to go back and forth on a document that's taking you 4 days when it should be 6 hours, because this is the standard. This is what it is. And so it actually helps everybody move faster and be more productive in that same sense.
I agree. And then maybe just to kind of close on the other end and bring it back is, if you haven't already started doing this and you're going to jump in and start to navigate extreme ownership and accountability with people, maybe go back and find some of our content on having difficult conversations, because not every time will it be well received. You'll get pushback because of behavior change or because of defensiveness. That just can be innate in people. So don't be afraid of that. Continue to work, continue to take ownership, build extreme ownership and accountability across all of your interactions to set the bar higher. And then build the skill of difficult conversations on the back end and along the way, because it'll come.
Yeah, I want to add, you just actually reminded me of one thing I want to add real quick, which is the dynamic of, it is speaking up, but it's also making sure you're praising at the same time that you're having the standard. That comes with the effective communication. So to your point, for anybody listening, go back through and look at some of the content around difficult conversations. But, I really find, especially with kids and team members and any relationship, it's like complimenting somebody. You're almost like training somebody, another person, to do things that you would like, because you both have agreed, like, this is the way that it is. So instead of talking about my kids, I'll talk about my wife. Bree will do certain things, and now it's to the point where she'll be like, you're going to be so proud of me. I did this. Like, I didn't do this, or I did this over here. And like, I am proud of you, but it's because as she's gone, it's, hey, thank you for doing this over here. I didn't have to yell at you for that, or I didn't have to bring it up, but I noticed that you did that. And I want to say really good job, because that makes our lives easier. It really helps me do this, 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 and this. Same thing with the kids, right? I'm over here sounding like I just yell at everybody all the time, which I probably do to some degree, but it is the, hey, when the yelling starts, or the yelling's not the right word, when the expectations start and it's communicated in an effective way, it's much more pressing when it's on the back of, hey, Lisa, you did a really good job over here. Like, you had a great day, or I've noticed your lighting looks a lot better, or thanks for sending this email. You did it in a way that really was effective. So just make sure when you're having, like, you're setting expectations, you're doing it in a way where it's not all chastising somebody. It is the positivity with the bigger request in there, because the negative stuff is what people focus on, and you want to be able to lift them up, and you want that to mean something more than just, oh, Nate's mad again, or Lisa said this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, what you're saying comes from a place of good intent and wanting to move everybody together forward. And so, that's a great call out. Show appreciation, show gratitude, compliment, lift people up, and also, bring along the healthy expectations that are needed to get to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Great topic. I'm glad, shower thoughts work. There it is. Like, I've always been curious about that. So there you go.
I'll be back next week with more.
Absolutely. Sure. All right. Well, good chatting with you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Bye.